Emma has always been the good sister. While I was getting drunk in college and dating questionable guys, she was getting her nursing degree, saving money, and planning for a stable future. She met Max when she was 26 at a hospital where she worked. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep who came in regularly to meet with doctors. Max seemed like everything Emma wanted in a husband. Successful career, made good money, talked about wanting kids and a house in the suburbs. He was handsome in that generic pharmaceutical sales rep way. Tall, clean-cut, always wore nice suits. Most importantly, he seemed completely devoted to Emma. They dated for 2 years, got engaged, had a beautiful wedding that Max paid for mostly by himself, which Emma thought was incredibly generous, and settled into what looked like the perfect marriage. From the outside, Max was an ideal husband. He traveled a lot for work, usually gone 2-3 days a week, but when he was home, he was attentive and affectionate. He made great money, they bought a gorgeous house in a nice suburb outside Denver, and Emma was talking about starting a family. Max's work schedule was demanding but consistent. He covered territory in Colorado, Utah, and Nevada, and had standing appointments with medical offices throughout the region. Emma knew his schedule by heart because he was very methodical about planning his trips. The only thing that seemed a little odd was how protective Max was of his phone and laptop. He'd take calls in another room, never left his devices unattended, and got genuinely anxious if Emma touched his stuff. But he explained it as client confidentiality and HIPAA requirements. Pharmaceutical sales involved sensitive medical information, so his paranoia made sense. Emma trusted him completely. Why wouldn't she? Max had never given her any reason to doubt him, and his story was consistent and believable. For 3 years, Emma thought she had the perfect marriage. She'd tell me how lucky she felt to have found someone so reliable and committed. Max was talking about kids, they were planning a big vacation to Europe, and Emma was the happiest I'd ever seen her. Then Emma's appendix tried to kill her, and everything fell apart. Emma was at work when she got hit with severe abdominal pain. Her co-workers rushed her to the ER where doctors determined she needed emergency appendectomy surgery. This was on a Tuesday afternoon when Max was supposed to be in Salt Lake City meeting with clients. Emma tried calling Max from the hospital but couldn't reach him. His phone went straight to voicemail, which was unusual but not unprecedented. Sometimes he had to turn his phone off during important meetings. The surgery went fine, but Emma was stuck in the hospital for 2 days recovering. She kept trying to call Max, getting increasingly worried that something had happened to him. By Wednesday evening, she was panicking because she hadn't heard from her husband in over 24 hours. That's when she called me, crying and terrified that Max had been in an accident. I drove to Salt Lake City that night to try to find Max. Emma gave me his usual hotel information and the names of the medical offices he was supposed to visit. I figured I'd track him down and bring him home to take care of his wife. Here's the problem. Max wasn't in Salt Lake City. He'd never been in Salt Lake City. I checked his usual hotel, no reservation under his name. I went to the medical offices Emma had mentioned. None of them had ever heard of Max or his pharmaceutical company. I spent an entire day trying to track down my brother-in-law and found absolutely no trace of him. When I got back to Denver and told Emma what I'd found, she initially thought there must be some mistake. Maybe Max had changed his schedule. Maybe I'd gotten the wrong information. Maybe his company had switched hotels. But then Emma started really thinking about Max's work trips, and things started seeming strange. Max always paid for everything in cash or with a credit card Emma never saw statements for. He had a separate work phone that Emma wasn't allowed to touch. His paychecks were direct deposited into an account Emma didn't have access to. He handled all the finances and just gave Emma money for household expenses. Emma had been so trusting that she'd never questioned any of these arrangements. But now, lying in a hospital bed trying to figure out where her husband was, she started wondering what else she didn't know about Max's life. That's when Emma decided to do some digging of her own. Emma was released from the hospital on Thursday evening. Max finally called her Friday morning, claiming he'd been in a dead zone with no cell service and hadn't gotten her messages until he got back to Denver.
His story was that he'd been at a remote medical facility in rural Utah, and there had been some kind of emergency that kept him busy for days. He was apologetic and concerned about Emma's surgery, bringing flowers and taking time off to care for her. Emma played along, but she was no longer buying his story. While Max was at work the following week, Emma started investigating. First, Emma called Max's company directly. The number on his business cards went to a generic voicemail that didn't mention the company name. When she tried to look up the pharmaceutical company online, she found a bare-bones website with no employee directory, no contact information beyond a P.O. box, and no real details about what they actually sold. That's when Emma knew something was seriously wrong. Emma is a nurse, which means she's detail-oriented, methodical, and very good at research. She approached investigating Max like she was solving a medical mystery. She started by going through their financial records. Max handled all the bills and banking, but Emma was able to access their joint checking account online. What she found was interesting. Max deposited the same amount every month, like clockwork, but it came from a personal account, not a business payroll system. Emma traced the deposits and found they came from an account in Max's name at a different bank, an account she'd never heard of. She couldn't access it, but she could see the account number and routing information. Next, Emma went through Max's things while he was supposedly at work. She found a second wallet hidden in his sock drawer, with a different driver's license. Same photo, same name, but the address was in Provo, Utah. Emma stared at this license for about an hour, trying to understand what it meant. Why would Max have a Utah driver's license? They'd lived in Colorado for their entire relationship. That's when Emma found the second phone. Hidden behind some books in Max's home office was an iPhone she'd never seen before. It was password protected, but Emma knew Max well enough to guess his passcode on the third try. What Emma found on that phone changed everything. The contact list was full of names Emma didn't recognize, including several women. The photo gallery had pictures of Max with people Emma had never seen. Casual, friendly photos that looked like family gatherings or social events. But the most shocking discovery was a folder labeled Home 2 that contained hundreds of photos of Max with a woman and 2 young children. Beach vacations, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, school events. Years' worth of family photos featuring Max as a husband and father to people Emma had never heard of. Emma sat on the floor of Max's office, scrolling through photos of her husband's secret life, trying to process what she was looking at. The timestamps showed these photos went back 5 years, meaning Max had been living this double life since before he'd even met Emma. The woman in the photos was pretty, blonde, and looked happy. The kids, a boy and a girl, maybe 6 and 8 years old, clearly adored Max. In every photo, they looked like a normal, loving family. Emma wasn't just looking at evidence of an affair, she was looking at evidence that her entire marriage was a lie. That's when Emma called me, and I drove over to find her sitting on her kitchen floor, surrounded by printouts of photos and bank records, looking like she'd seen a ghost. She said, "I think Max has another wife and kids. I think I'm the other woman, except I didn't know it."
After Emma showed me the photos and explained what she'd found, we spent the weekend trying to piece together Max's double life. Emma was surprisingly calm about the whole thing. I think she was in shock, but she was also channeling all her energy into gathering information. Emma used the address from Max's Utah driver's license to do some online stalking. Property records showed a house in Provo registered to Max and someone named Jennifer Morrison. Marriage records showed Max had married Jennifer in 2018, 2 years before he married Emma. Jennifer Morrison's Facebook page was public, and it was like looking into an alternate universe. Photos of her life with Max, their kids, family vacations, anniversary posts calling Max the love of my life. According to her social media, she and Max had been together for 8 years and married for 5. Emma was Max's second wife. Jennifer was his first wife, and she had no idea Emma existed. But here's where it gets really crazy. Emma found evidence that Max was planning to marry a third woman. Going deeper into Max's secret phone, she found text conversations with someone named Ashley in Las Vegas. The messages were romantic and included discussions about engagement rings and wedding planning. Max was apparently proposing to Ashley within the next few months. Ashley's Instagram showed a successful real estate agent in her early 30s who was clearly smitten with Max. Her recent posts included photos of expensive dinners, weekend getaways, and captions about finally finding the one. Max wasn't just a bigamist. He was a serial bigamist who was planning to add a third wife to his collection. Emma and I spent hours trying to understand the logistics of Max's scam. His pharmaceutical sales job was complete fiction. Max's actual income appeared to come from his wives. Jennifer worked as a dental hygienist and had inherited money from her parents. Ashley was a successful realtor making 6 figures. Emma was a nurse with a steady income and good credit. Max was essentially running a marriage scam, finding financially stable women, marrying them, and living off their combined resources while maintaining separate households. The travel schedule he'd claimed was for work was actually him rotating between his different lives. Emma got Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Jennifer got Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Sunday was apparently for Ashley, plus whenever he could sneak away from his work trips. Emma started tracking Max's movements and realized his schedule was incredibly precise. He'd been managing 3 relationships for years without any of them knowing about the others. I have to tell Jennifer, she has kids with this man. She deserves to know what he's doing, Emma said. I was worried about Emma's mental state. She seemed almost eerily calm about discovering her husband's massive betrayal. But Emma told me she was already past the emotional breakdown phase and moving into problem-solving mode. I'm not angry. I am angry, but I'm more determined. Max thinks he's so clever, managing all of us like we're stupid. He has no idea what he's dealing with. That's when Emma started planning what she called Operation Transparency.
Emma's plan was brilliant in its simplicity. She was going to force Max's 3 lives to collide in the most public and devastating way possible. First, Emma reached out to Jennifer Morrison. This was the hardest part because Emma had to convince a stranger that her husband was living a double life without sounding like a crazy person. Emma sent Jennifer a carefully worded Facebook message. Hi, Jennifer. I know this is going to sound strange, but I think we need to talk about Max. I have information that you're going to want to see, and I think you have information that I need to see. Would you be willing to have a phone conversation? Jennifer's initial response was suspicious and defensive, but Emma sent her a few photos from Max's secret phone. Pictures of their house in Colorado, pictures of Emma and Max together, copies of their marriage certificate. The phone call between Emma and Jennifer was apparently 5 hours long. By the end of it, they'd compared timelines, shared financial information, and confirmed that Max had been living completely separate lives with both of them for years. Jennifer was devastated, but also furious. Her kids called Max Daddy, and he'd been lying to them about his frequent absences. Jennifer had been planning their family around Max's work schedule, never knowing that his work schedule was actually his rotation between wives. Emma and Jennifer decided to work together to expose Max, but they also wanted to warn Ashley before she got in too deep. Emma contacted Ashley through Instagram, using the same approach she'd used with Jennifer. Ashley was initially skeptical, but the photo evidence was overwhelming. Ashley had been dating Max for 2 years and was planning to marry him, thinking he was this successful pharmaceutical sales rep who traveled for work. Now Emma had 3 women who'd been victimized by the same man, and they were all angry and motivated to take him down. The plan they came up with was perfect, but it required careful timing around Max's existing schedule. Emma knew that Max was supposed to be in Utah with Jennifer that weekend for their son's birthday party. So Emma told Max she had to work a double shift at the hospital Saturday night and wouldn't be home. Jennifer told Max that she wanted to surprise him by bringing the kids to his work conference in Denver instead of him coming to Utah. She said the kids were excited to see where Daddy worked and maybe they could make a weekend of it. Ashley told Max that her work conference had been moved to Denver instead of her usual Las Vegas territory, and she wanted him to come as her +1 to meet some important business partners. So Max thought Emma would be working all night and wouldn't know he wasn't home. Jennifer and the kids were coming to surprise him. Ashley was going to her work conference, and he would be her date. In Max's mind, he was going to have to juggle Jennifer plus kids during the day, then ditch them to have a romantic dinner with Ashley and network with some lucrative business partners. He had no idea that Emma was orchestrating the whole thing, and that all 3 women would be sitting at the same table waiting for him. All 3 women knew what was really happening. Max had no idea. Saturday evening arrived, and the plan was in motion. Emma was supposedly at the hospital working her double shift, but she was actually already at the restaurant waiting. Max arrived at the restaurant first, expecting to meet Ashley for their romantic business dinner. He was dressed in his best suit, ready to impress her colleagues. Jennifer and the kids arrived 10 minutes later. Max was confused. He thought they were back at his hotel and he'd planned to take them back to Utah after his dinner with Ashley. "Surprise," Jennifer said brightly. "The kids wanted to see where you have your business dinners." Max looked panicked, trying to figure out how to get Jennifer and the kids out of there before Ashley arrived. But before he could say anything, Ashley walked in, looking for Max and their supposed business associates. The look on Max's face when he saw Jennifer, the kids, and Ashley all in the same restaurant was apparently priceless. He realized in that moment that his carefully managed double life was about to explode. That's when Emma stepped out from behind a pillar where she'd been waiting. "Hi, honey," Emma said calmly, walking up to the table. "Sorry I'm late. My shift ended early. I thought I'd surprise you." Max went completely white. All 3 of his separate lives were now standing in the same room, and he had absolutely no way to explain it.
What happened next was apparently the most spectacular public meltdown Emma had ever witnessed. Max tried to run. He literally stood up from the table and tried to walk out of the restaurant, but Jennifer blocked his path and demanded he explain to their children why there was a strange woman calling him her husband. Ashley was screaming at Max in the middle of this upscale restaurant, demanding to know who these women were and why he'd lied to her about being single. Emma just sat at the table, calm filming everything on her phone. The scene was so dramatic that other diners started recording it too. By the end of the evening, videos of Max's bigamy exposure were all over social media. But Emma wasn't done. While Max was trying to manage the chaos at the restaurant, Emma had been busy. She'd contacted Max's actual employer because yes, he did have a real job, just not the one he'd told any of his wives about. Max worked for a logistics company, managing warehouse operations. It was a decent job, but nowhere near as prestigious or lucrative as pharmaceutical sales. Emma sent Max's boss screenshots of his fake business cards, fake company website, and evidence that he'd been lying to his identity to conduct personal business. Max was fired immediately. Emma also contacted all 3 women's banks and credit card companies with evidence of Max's fraud. It turned out Max had been using all of their credit and financial information to fund his elaborate lifestyle. Within a week, Max was facing criminal charges for bigamy, identity fraud, and financial fraud across 3 states. But Emma's most devastating move was what she did to Max's living situation. Emma owned their house in Colorado. It was purchased with her money and her credit, with Max as a co-signer.
She had him legally evicted and changed all the locks while he was trying to figure out where to sleep. Jennifer kicked Max out of their house in Utah and filed for divorce, seeking full custody of their children. Ashley broke up with Max and filed a restraining order after he showed up at her Las Vegas condo trying to explain everything. Within 2 weeks, Max went from having 3 homes, 3 relationships, and 3 sources of income to being homeless, single, and unemployed. Emma filed for divorce and was able to keep everything because of Max's fraud. Jennifer got their house and full custody of the kids. Ashley got closure and dodged the biggest bullet of her life. The 3 women stayed in touch and actually became friends. Emma said it was surreal but also comforting to have people who understood exactly what she'd been through. Max tried reaching out to each of them separately, with different sob stories and promises to change, but they'd all compared notes and knew his manipulation tactics too well to fall for them again. The legal consequences are still playing out. Max pled guilty to bigamy and financial fraud to avoid a longer trial. He got 2 years in prison and will have to pay restitution to all 3 women. Emma moved on with her life amazingly well. She bought Max out of his share of their house for basically nothing, got a promotion at work, and started dating a doctor who actually is what Max pretended to be. Jennifer moved back to Colorado to be closer to Emma, and their kids are doing well in therapy. Ashley moved to Colorado too, and now all 3 women have regular group dinners where they celebrate dodging the same bullet. Emma told me the whole experience taught her to trust her instincts and never be so trusting that she stops asking questions. She also said that taking control of the situation and exposing Max publicly was incredibly empowering after feeling so betrayed and foolish. The craziest part is that Max apparently tried this same scam in Arizona and Oregon before Colorado. Emma and Jennifer helped police in those states identify more potential victims. Max's total victim count is probably close to 12 women over the past decade. Emma's takedown of Max has become legendary in our family. She went from being the sweet, trusting sister to being the person who orchestrated one of the most thorough destruction of a lying, cheating husband that anyone's ever seen. And honestly, I'm so proud of her. Emma turned the worst betrayal of her life into the most badass moment of her life, and she probably saved dozens of other women from falling for Max's scam.